to Scenario D,
the podcast that takes you behind the magic by giving you the facts and a whole lot of feelings.
I'm Kirbs.
And I'm Lish.
And this week, we've invited a friend of the show to share their questions, qualms, and quandaries from Season 4.
They've got a lot of feelings and a lot of opinions, so let the shenanigans begin.
Okay, Lish, I am so excited. I think it's been a hot minute since I've been this excited to record something. Not because I haven't enjoyed some of the things we've been talking about in this season, but you may recall that we started this season over a year ago. There's been some tough moments, okay? There's been
a long one.
Oh, it's been so long. And I mean, you know,
like I don't even remember like a time before we were recording this animal season. Like it's just been...
Yeah, some people use BC and AD. We're going to go like before 3 and like after 4 in terms of season numbers because it's taken so long. But today I'm very excited. Not just because we get to put a pretty bow on season 4, all about the animals, but also because we have a very special guest. Oh my goodness. One of my dearest friends who also happens to be a really big Disney adult himself. It's Ben Scott! Woo!
Hooray!
Hi guys. Hello.
We're so excited
to
have you.
Happy that you're here with us today.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
Ben and I work together. For people who do not know the name Ben Scott, you will after this conversation. But Ben and I work together at the same creative agency, so we became friends. Ben, when did you join Salt?
Like a year and a half ago, yeah.
Yeah. So for a year and a half, Ben has been a dedicated listener of Scenario D, passionate Disney fan, someone who likes to argue with me about things I've said. So I can't wait to hear what he has to say about season 4. But in order to get a better sense of what, shall we say, authority you might have in this space, Ben, we have something that we like to do with every guest we have on Scenario D, which is the most magical rapid fire. So, Lish, would you please kick it off with our first question for dear sweet Ben?
First question. So this pertains to like all things Disney. What is your most magical Disney memory? Could be movie, parks related, Disney store, anything.
I've been anticipating this one because, as you know, longtime listener, first time caller. But it's weird because it's probably a more recent one. But I, for my last job, I had to travel a lot for work, and I was in the States quite often, and was in California, in San Diego, I believe. And I was like hop, skip, and a jump. I'll put an extra couple days on the weekend and I'll go to Disneyland. And it was my first time in Disneyland. I had been to Disney World twice when I was a kid, when I was younger. But it was my first time to Disneyland and like first time back in like a Disney park for like 20 plus years. And I told KB this, but like I splurged and I was like, okay, like work paid for the flight. I'll stay like on the Disney resort. So I stayed a night there. And so I was there for like rope drop, first thing in the morning, like right there when everything opened up. And I got emotional. Like I walking the park after the rope drop, get like just like taking it all in, like Main Street. I think I had gone to Cars Land. Yeah, no, that's not true. No, it was the Star Wars, the new ride. And so I was like, that was like I was beelining for there, but just like navigating like Frontierland and going through all the spaces or whatever. And I literally had to like FaceTime my mom and like try and fight back tears because I was like, it was bringing me back to like a kid and when she had taken us as kids, and like without getting into all the family stuff, it was just more or less like reminded me of a simpler time. And it was and I know that's what like the parks and like Disney gets kind of pigeonholed for is like escapism, but it was like everything I wanted in that moment, and it was amazing. So yeah, probably my most magical moment.
That is a great answer. And I think there's something like super magical about us Disney adults, like the first time you kind of go as an adult, like not as a family vacation, and you're like, I like went out of my way and like chose to do this. Like it's very conscious. Like I think Curbs the first time we went together was kind of like that for me. It's like I am like this is like my adulting. It's like this Disney thing, and it's like I don't know. I get it. Super magical. Yeah.
And you also, Lish, last year, you kind of did something similar.
I did
or earlier this year. Honestly, when was it?
It was
again.
Yeah, it was
Vacuum.
April last year. I had like one day to do like Disneyland and was rope drop, running all around like a crazy person, just trying to like get as much of it as possible like crammed in, and it was just like the best day ever.
Yeah. I never thought of it that way, but like actively as an adult, like like we only get so much vacation time, and like our money is our money now as grown stuff like that, and it's just like like actively choosing to do this. That's totally it.
And choosing it because we kind of know what to expect, but also know that there will be something new to experience within some of those familiar experiences, because Walt Disney's vision for the parks was always that they'd constantly be evolving and changing. And even if some of those changes are not what we would want, doesn't matter. You're still going to experience a different experience. Yeah. Say experience one more time, KB. You're still going to experience something different every time that you go, which makes it also kind of a mixed bag, magical adventure every time.
Yeah, and like and like you said, the mixed bag of like, and I know we're not talking about the parks today, but like it is the mixed bag of like the things you can count on, or like Peter Pan's flight is still one of my favorite rides ever, and it has evolved over the years, but like you know what to expect, you know what you're getting, and you know that it's like magic, like it is. I'm stepping into a world versus a new Star Wars ride, a new Cars ride, or whatever kind of thing.
Totally. Yeah. Now, on that same vein of something that is familiar and magical every time, we would now love to know what, in your opinion, is the most magical Disney animal film. Now, I would also like to encourage you, if you can, to pick one from the list that we spoke about in this season, so that we're all kind of on a level playing field. Because if you're Lish, you think that Simba is a hero and should have been in season 2. She is wrong, but you might think that. So, something that is clearly animal protagonist would be the desire.
This is going to tell us a lot right here. It's going to set the tone for this.
I can't wait.
Episode. Do you know the answer, Curbs?
No, I don't.
No?
I don't. I knew the answer to the first question.
Yeah.
Because
you talked about it.
We talked.
But this I don't know.
The one that brought up the most feels, I guess, was 101 Dalmatians.
Oh my gosh, this is amazing.
I'm
so excited. I can't believe you said that. You have made my night.
Wow.
I'm thrilled.
Really?
Yeah.
I don't know you.
You're going down, Curbs. It's officially me and Ben against you.
Oh, it shouldn't shock me. It shouldn't shock me because, like, I've learned over the past year and a half that I've known both of you in separate lanes of my life. You're very similar when it comes to some of the Disney purist things, particularly in the films. And I mean, objectively, 101 Dalmatians is a fantastic movie. I just don't like it. Like, I just think it's so boring. I don't understand. In the same way that a lot of people are like, Dumbo, who dis? Like, and I'm a big Dumbo apologist.
There's just there's quite a few, like, quite boring movies that we covered in this season, and 101 Dalmatians was just not one of them. Like, there's just so much good stuff going on. Like, it overcame like a lot of like visual hurt. Like, I don't know, we don't need to do that episode again, but like, Ben, I've got your back on this.
And okay, so I know why Lish loves it and thinks it's magical, and a lot of that is, like you alluded to, go listen to our 101 Dalmatians episode if you're wondering what we're talking about. But a lot of the stuff that went into making that film I know is very interesting and very important for building the foundations of what was to come after it, and also representative of what came before. But Ben, what is it about that movie for you that makes it so magical? Like, what brought the feels up when you rewatched it?
It's one of the things that and I try and listen or watch along with you guys, like knowing kind of like the upcoming episodes per podcast. So I'm literally side by side with you
Love it.
for the journey. But it was, out of all of the animal movies this season, it was probably the one that evoked the most nostalgia for me. And I could like, it put me back in a place in my life, like my childhood, could remember where it was. I have two brothers, I'm the oldest, and I have two younger brothers. And like I could like literally pinpoint like how old they were at the time, and like we all had a plushie. Like I had Lucky, I believe.
Oh,
And my mother's brothers had, one had Rolly and one, no, I had Rolly, one had Lucky, and the other had Patch.
that's so cute.
And it was just like adorable, but at the
Yeah.
same time, I was like, and like there's a decent age gap between all of us, so it's just like what's that 12-year-old doing with a plushie? But no,
Don't
no,
look in
no.
any of
Yeah.
Don't come to my house, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it was just like it brought me back to like a moment in time, kind of similar to like my magic memory. It was just like, oh, it was like, this was like I was very much raised in a Disney household, so explains who I am now, I guess.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, so it was evocative of like a bigger kind of like time, and that's what really made it so impactful for
Yeah,
you.
totally.
All right, Ben. Final question. Most important question, probably. Most magical Scenario D episode from season 4. So from this animal season.
So kind of two in Dalmatians, obviously, because again, like all the feels, and it was just like great learnings behind the scenes of all that kind of stuff. But I will also say Zootopia, and we'll probably get into this a little bit, but I had never seen it before. So
whoa. But you
yeah,
did you watch it before the episode?
I watched it before the episode. So like it forced me to watch it. But and like I was very pleasantly surprised as well. Like I again, I don't know, animal movies or whatever, I just was like, and because I like, in truth, listening to you guys from past seasons, like the chicken, I've never watched the Chicken Little one, and
Me neither,
there's a good
Ben.
chance
Yeah.
but yeah, probably not. So I didn't have high hopes for Zootopia, so but I watched it, and so yeah, so that those two episodes were good for different reasons.
Yeah, that's an interesting thing that I've encountered with other people that I'm friends with that have listened either regularly to Scenario D or only every once in a while. Like Joel, for example, he's like, I would never listen to a Zootopia episode because I've never seen it and I'm not interested in seeing it. And that's largely because for Joel, he likes the movies he's already seen. He's not interested in expanding his Disney library of films.
He's missing out.
I am curious, like, what kept you from watching it? Like, so, you know, there have been moments in Disney's history where the movies they're putting out, not so great. The 2000s, Open Secret, everyone knows. Home on the Range came out. Like, you might as well burn the place to the ground. Like, that was just a disaster, for my opinion, my humble opinion. But, like, Zootopia came out in 2016. There were a few movies that came out before that one that had done really well. Movies like Frozen, Moana, like Pixar was doing really great stuff with films like Coco. So can you remember what it was about Zootopia that just didn't grab you? I'm just really curious because that was one that Lish and I think we saw it in theater together. Did we not? Like, did we not go and see it?
I don't remember.
Am I making this up?
Like, you said that in episode 2, and it doesn't, like, ring a bell for me, but it does sound like something we would do, so it's extremely...
sounds right. I think we did, and, I mean, part of that was we're like, it's a Disney movie, we go see it in theaters, but clearly you're not as dedicated, Ben, so what kept you from the siren song of Zootopia?
So it's actually a pretty clear answer. It's pockets or moments kind of in my own life of going like it, like either like all in on Disney, and then like I can remember like in my teenage years falling off, Pixar, like Toy Story, and that bringing me back into the fold, and then like depending on like whatever I was doing else in my life at another point, like would fall off and then come back again. Because I can remember I didn't, and it's funny you called out to Coco because I didn't see Coco in theaters. Coco is one of my favorites.
So good.
And so good. And I was going
Coco
on
mug.
vacation. Oh yeah, like golden. And yeah, I was going on vacation. It clearly had been in theaters and out of theaters at this point, and so it was a long flight, and I was like, I'll watch Coco. My grandmother had just passed, like maybe in like the past year, so I hadn't like also went into this on a plane with people around me, not knowing fully what this story was going to be about, and as like it's going through, and obviously, like the abuela and like and just that whole story, and it like I was bawling on the plane by the end of it for like all the like beautiful reasons, and like there was a woman who was like very generous beside me. She's like, "Are you okay?" And I'm like, "Yeah, the story was just amazing."
So beautiful.
Coco.
Yeah.
Coco, yeah.
Yeah, so but so long story short, it's definitely like pockets or moments in time of going, oh, I just like wasn't watching a lot of Disney at that point.
Right.
And when you and like in reality, like coming back into the fold, it's like, okay, which princess do I need to get caught up on? Elsa and Anna
Yeah.
and all the rest of them are priority over Judy. Sorry.
And Zootopia
Wow.
did kind of fly under the radar a little bit given the time, because like Frozen was kind of like, it was like right after it. So it's like we were kind of, was it right after, right before? I don't know, but it was like in that kind of time
Everyone was
period,
singing
and
Let It
like
Go.
yeah, it kind of, it's like really good, but yeah, flew under the radar a bit for sure. And I think I had the same experience with Coco, where like I didn't go see it in theaters, and then saw it, you know, when it was on like Netflix or something after. And that was like, oh my gosh, it's so good. And I feel like even like Pixar separately, that kind of like got me like back into that train a little bit. And yeah, so I can totally relate. There's some times where you're just like, you're not dialed in, you're not going. I've kind of even like lost a little like mojo recently, where it's like Kirbs and I like kind of begrudgingly went to see Wish. We were like, do we want to be here? But like, maybe we should. So yeah.
Yeah. Well, Chris Pine drew us in, you know, and then there's a song that he sings with
so good.
Aisha, the lead,
Yeah.
which is a very confusing song because lyrically it's clearly a romantic love song.
Yeah.
And yet they're not in a romantic relationship, nor should they be. That would be super weird. And like, I'm just trying to figure out the whole time, is Chris Pine actually singing, or is this auto-tune? I don't know. I got really distracted by the details in that movie, and the details weren't that good.
No.
So you heard it here first. Wish sucks.
Yeah.
Like, Wish, 100 years in the making, don't make it.
No.
You know?
Wasn't he in? He was in Into the Woods as well, wasn't he? Like he was.
Yes.
He had a singing role in that one.
I think he can sing. I'm on the side of, there's probably something there, but yeah,
Oh.
He
it was
probably
just,
can. I just don't know why his character, as a complete tangent, looked kind of like a George Clooney look. Like, just make it look more like Chris Pine. Like, I don't know. I don't really understand what was happening with him.
Yeah.
there was
And like there's a Lego set. I don't know. It's too much. Like,
it's just yeah, we're kind of like, it kind of depends if you trust Disney. Like, are you going to like spend your time and money to go see something in theaters? Especially, it's like now there's like Disney Plus, you know, you can catch everything later and whatnot.
Yeah, it's also like they like clearly like the Marvel universe does this too, with like casting people of the moment. So it's like, or like once you're in the Disney family, like there's some people who are just like in it forever and are constantly like voicing or acting. And it really felt like that, like Ariana DeBose. And she's just like had such a wave between Broadway and winning her Oscar and everything like that. So it was like no doubt that they had cast her trying to like kind of keep up that momentum or ride her wave a little bit.
Yeah, to capture a new audience too, because like Hamilton being on Disney Plus.
Yeah.
Like there was a new audience now that's looking for those types of names and will recognize her name from being that sort of entertainment. Like they're really trying to round out their EGOT kind of casting here to be like, we've got everybody.
And
I don't know if
and
they need to do
since
that,
they've
but...
like casted people like the past I don't know how many years that like actually really can sing, like there's just like an extra emphasis on like get somebody who's authentically all around good for the role. None of this like, you know, secret singer in the background that's like a different actress or whatever that they used to do in the 90s.
And like that's the other thing too, and this is just like a Hollywood in general, is like you think of someone like Emma Stone, who like amazing comedic actress. Clearly she's got some other chops as well. But like all of those people, and like they're probably all roughly around the same age as us, like they were brought up almost similar to like Disney kids in that like you're going to act, you're going to sing, and you're going to dance. So Anna Kendrick is one of those who like I can't actually stand, but she's like she's got an amazing voice. She actually can sing, and it was one of those things that like we are introduced to a lot of them acting first, and then it's all of a sudden it's just like, oh yeah, I can like I got some pipes too, kind of thing.
Yeah. 100%. Yeah, she bought a ticket for the long way around, and that long way is still going. So for some reason, we're all still listening to it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the singing thing is actually something I missed a lot of in this season. I think part of the reason I don't love animal movies as much is because we don't get the same type of songwriting in these movies. Like, obviously, I'm the girly who talks about music. I'm the one who is going to be like, this movie's better than it is because the songs are great. And we just didn't have the same kind of oomph with that, especially in films like Zootopia. Like, Try Everything is one of the best Disney songs ever written. Like, fight us on it. It's so good. But it doesn't have other songs.
There's only one musical in this whole season, which is The Lion King. Everything else, I just noticed that right now.
Yeah.
Wow.
Revelations here on the pod today. Listen. But I'm curious to know, Ben, which of our kind of like sections per se are the things that really pique your interest? Like you mentioned that you learned a lot in the 101 Dalmatians episode about Disney behind the scenes, but is that the kind of stuff that you're really most interested in, or is your opinion of a film more impacted by some of those other things we talk about? So for anyone playing along at home, we've got Disney at the time, behind the scenes, cultural impact, music, characters and story, and technology. Like, what things make a good Disney film for you, and what things do we talk about so well that you can't wait to hear more about it? You know what I mean?
I definitely look forward to the Disney at the time, like a little bit of like of a history lesson for sure. And it's probably a combination of that and then the cultural impact, almost like the before and the after of the movie. Just because it's like, again, great learning for me, just to kind of my personal interest. But it's one of those things that like someone who's like, I don't know, I kind of sit on the periphery of the industry in some ways, and that like I've played in production and all that kind of stuff. So like I have enough of an interest to go, oh, like this movie took 10 years versus this one taking 2 years, and knowing what goes into it. And to know again like how it's evolved to say like something going from hand drawn to Xerox to now CGI, and the time, energy, and investment that goes into all of those things. And like I think just Disney at the time is like a little bit of a snapshot, because I live in this space where I'm a millennial, and I was coming up in the time where a lot of the movies were being re-released either in theaters or VHS. And so as a kid, I'm like, oh, it's like a brand new movie. It just came out or whatever. Like Dalmatians is a great example of that. And it's just like, oh no, that came in like 1970.
And then your parents tell you that they saw it in theaters, and you're like, what? Like when you were a kid.
You're like, step off, mom. No, you didn't.
Theaters existed then?
Yeah.
What are you talking about? Yeah.
Weren't you walking uphill both ways? Like
Yeah.
moving pictures were not a thing. Okay.
Exactly.
I would
Yeah.
know.
Yeah.
Yeah. I totally get that, and I feel like that's why like Disney at the time and providing that context was something that was really important to me when we were doing this podcast and putting that together, because yeah, I felt the same way where they kind of all blended together as movies from my childhood, and I didn't really like, I know I saw some in theaters and some not, but we had all the VHSs and didn't really
Yeah.
have a way to like separate them apart from, you know, what the current struggles of the world that were going on or what was happening at the Disney company, who was in charge. And I always feel like Kirbs does such a good job of like bringing it back around at the end to like, you know, what this movie's like imprint on that was, and like how they kind of like related to what was going on around them.
Well, and and like as a listener, it's also the thing that you can tell that your two passions come through in it, and that like Lish, you do a really great job with the build up. And then KB, like obviously music, but then also the cultural impact too. Like you can, it makes obviously listening enjoyable because it's not just a case of you guys doing homework. It's like you get something invested in it.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, we're
Thank you.
invested.
Wow. Say more nice things about us, Ben. That was nice.
No,
It's a
no.
soundbite.
Okay, and we're done.
And yeah.
Now, I mean, so Disney at the time and cultural impact was kind of like bookends. Those are definitely, to me, those are the meat and potatoes of a Scenario D episode. So,
Yeah.
like, glad you're picking up on that. Glad that that's coming through, because those two things do work together more often than not. And I know, for me, as someone who's interested in that kind of extension or legacy piece of Disney films, I know there were quite a few episodes where I'd be like, by the way, racist police coming in here to tell you that this film's horrible. And Lish was like, I had never thought of that.
Mm-hmm.
Or, and then for me, on the opposite side, her being like, there were 3 different people in charge all at the same time in the course of 3 years, and someone had a quadruple bypass, and here we are, the Lions movie, right? Like there's learnings on both sides. So I'm curious, as an astute listener who is watching the films kind of alongside us, and also someone who's interested in those two pieces, like what kinds of things stood out to you, or what was new to you that you were like, I did not know that, or had not thought about this film before? Knowing that there are a lot of those rich pockets in all of these animal stories where they're taking really human issues, but making it something that's much more relatable and accessible to any type of audience.
I think one of the learnings was definitely is like this is where like you really started to see the animators do the like the treks, like to go to different like Lion King's a great example of like them traveling to like understand, you know, the area as well as like animal behavior and so on, and that kind of stuff. It's probably a combination of that, of just like, and Lish, this is another thing that we have in common. We both love big cats. It's, I think that there's an account on Instagram that I just followed. This guy had a puma, and he just like the puma crawls in bed with him every morning, and I'm like, I need this.
Goals.
Yeah. But yeah, I think it's like it is those like behind the scene techniques, because you go, I can remember as a kid going to Disney World, and it would have been, I'm sure, some form of like some iteration of the art of animation, and walking through, and someone like doing a sketch of Ariel, and I was a kid who drew or could draw, and so my parents like were like, oh, you're gonna work here someday, like this is something you're gonna do, kind of thing. And but to understand now as an adult, to go, oh no, they watched cats walk, and how they would drag their feet to put it down, and like just those like little you know, like the kind of like micro movements, and how like the little articulations and everything like that. And then I think the other one too is like, I don't know, I guess I'm like really interested in the animation side of things, because the Cruella's car, your note on like how they like built a physical model, and that very much like not only informed the animation, but like kind of was integrated into it. Yeah, I think it's just like those little tidbits of like, and part of it is also like KB, and this is like speaks to our world, but like I look at what we do as world building, and
Mhm.
and I think it's part of my fascination with some of these movies more than others is you see that how they come to life, and it's the mechanics of building those worlds that most people don't see behind the curtain kind of thing.
This
Yeah.
was also like such an interesting season for like what you're talking about with the actually going on the trips and doing the different things, because when we were talking about the princess movies, like especially early days, they would like bring in actors and actresses and like act out scenes. There was a lot of tracing and that kind of thing. But then when you get to like animals, obviously that gets a lot more complicated. Like you don't just have someone that's gonna do it for you. Like you can bring an animal in, you can kind of work with it, but it definitely changed like the dynamic of like how they were working on different things and like how they had to get creative with it and everything. So I found that really interesting this season as well, to see how they kind of evolved throughout the years.
Yeah, like Lion King's a great example. I rewatched Lion King a couple nights ago, and from the scenes where it's more like the tertiary characters of like animals in the background kind of in their movements, and it's just like no, like that looks real. Like
Yeah.
that's like if I were to
Yeah.
watch National Geographic, like that's what that looks like in real time. But then also like there's one point where like Pumbaa, it's the scene where they're like charging Pride Rock, and I think Zazu's like, let me out, let me out, let me in, let me in. And then Pumbaa comes in and like bulldozes everyone. But just like the kind of like pig moment, like it's
Yeah.
very, it's just like, oh, like that's what that animal does. Like
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
pretty fascinating.
Now, this you might be able to break the tie on this now, actually. You bring up Lion King. Timon and Pumbaa. Between Lish and I, based on I know you know me a little bit more than you know Lish, but I'm just curious, if you were to assign one of those characters to each of us, who would you assign? Because depending on the day, we have a different take on it, and we've never really been able to come to a conclusion. Other ones are clear cut. Cogsworth and Lumiere, like we don't need to talk about it.
Yeah.
We know exactly who's who with that, but this one has always stumped us. So who would you say?
I'll say this as a listener.
Yeah.
I would say KB, your Timon, and Lish, your Pumbaa.
That's what I feel like too.
Really?
Yeah, I feel like we're like that encompasses our relationship the most. Like I don't feel like a Pumbaa like in my life really, but like if you've gotta be each be one, I feel like that's correct. For sure.
And why? Is it because I swing big and then have to like walk it back, or what? Like what is it in particular? As a listener, of course, that makes me more of a Timon. I'm not mad about it, but
Like he's the
curious.
talker, like right? Timon is the talker.
Yeah,
Yeah.
there it is.
Like
Wow.
my mom will listen to these episodes and be like, "Oh, I really liked this one. Like you actually got to like talk like a bit more, or like it's just like."
Okay, but Sweet Maria also listened to when we accidentally posted Lion King Part 1 2 weeks
Yeah,
in a
she
row.
listened to
She
it
thought it
twice.
was a different episode. So like
I know.
Maria, I love you. I don't know
Look,
if I
she's
can
putting
trust
the
that.
YouTube on and she's like doing a puzzle. Like she's half paying attention,
True.
but bless her, we'll take the views.
Okay.
She's dedicated.
Okay.
She's
Yeah,
dedicated.
she is.
She's dedicated. And then Ben, who of the Lion King universe do you think you are most like? And it can be for any reason. It can be for a like deep reason, an arbitrary reason. I'm just curious. Because I'm also a Zazu, and I would say, Lish, you're like a Nala or Simba cross. You're one of those two. Like, really depends on the day.
I'm in
Depends
my
on what's
Simba
going on,
era like lately, but
Yeah, Simba era. Reclaiming my time. Yeah.
I can remember as a kid watching this movie, and it's gonna be the same character now as an adult, but for different reasons. I can remember as a kid identifying with Nala, and now same thing. But like as a kid, it was just one of those things that I was like, they're all getting into stupid things, and like she just like she knows better kind of thing.
Yeah, like
Yeah.
get
Yeah.
on track. Yeah.
Yeah, and probably similarly now, but it's also one of those things of like, hey, like she's bringing them back to Pride Rock to like get the show on the road and kind of stuff like that. So I'd say, yeah, I'd say I'm a Nala.
She's like
Okay.
an amazing character. I'm obsessed with Nala. She's
I mean, big cat.
yeah, big cat. She's like just so determined and is just like the perfect partner for Simba. And I find them to be like just such strong like equals throughout. Like, I don't know. I love them.
Yeah.
I mean, if I had to pick a lion couple,
Yeah.
I'm picking Mufasa and Sarabi. Like Pride, Love,
Sarabi's-
Everlasting. That's what I'm picking. Let's be real.
Mhm.
That's the relationship we should all be aspiring to.
Yeah, Sarabi's solid as well.
My mom never remembers Sarabi's name. She always goes, "What's the queen cat?" And I'm like, "Sarabi?" She goes, "Yeah, that's the one." And then like she doesn't have a follow-up comment. It's just kind of like if Lion King comes up, she's like, "What's the queen's? Who's the queen cat?" And I'm like,
Just checking in again, just making sure.
just checking in. Yeah, just
Yeah.
making sure it's still the same. That things haven't changed. Yeah, absolutely.
So I am curious, Ben. I mean, I know you said you loved 101 Dalmatians. Kirbs has said that's like her least favorite of the season. I think she's sticking to it. So that's like a big
am.
disagreement there. Is there anything else that like stands out to you from this season that's like, you know, you're either with one of us or the other one, or you disagree with us completely, or it's just like we're wrong about something?
I often disagree with Curbs on the music. And I'll say this more
Interesting.
so because I acknowledge the fact that like you come to it with an informed opinion. You have a music
Mhm.
background, you're a little bit more you're more informed and grounded in it. Whereas I'm like, nah, I'm like, that's a bop. Like you can't tell me otherwise kind of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And like I am a Hercules apologist. I am a Hercules, and I know this is not that season, but
We can fight about Hercules. Like I'm down. Yeah.
that's like it's just the music in that season, and like listening to you guys have done that episode.
Yeah.
It's one of those things that I'm like, no, you guys are wrong. So when it comes to music, because like Oliver and Company, that was a learning for me rewatching that one, because and you guys talked about in the episode of like kind of had like an A cast as far as like Billy
Mhm.
Joel, Bette Midler, like couldn't go wrong really, but did. And I went wrong with rewatching it because I hadn't watched it for years, and it lived in my memory in the best way possible, because I'm just
Mhm.
like, I'm like, oh, it was fun, and I can always remember like those songs were like playful and just like a good time. And rewatching it recently, I was just like the story's not going anywhere, and like and
Not good.
and it like it felt forced, like
Mhm.
the bad guy and like the situations and scenarios they kept getting into and everything like that. And I'm like the only great part about this movie is actually the music. And that's clearly debatable as well. So so one of those I think that's what comes to mind right now. And
Yeah.
Didn't I like the music? Did I hate it? I feel like I liked it.
I think
Yeah.
maybe I didn't like it.
You definitely did not like it. You
I don't
like
really
anything
like
about that movie.
anything about that movie. So
yeah, like because I remember going into it and being like, oh, this is like one of my favorites, and then rewatching it and going, I'm like, not so much.
It
Like
does
my
not hold
ranking
up.
would move.
yeah.
Yeah, I mean, okay, what is your criteria for ranking then? So like Lish and I often go kind of like rewatchability is big
Okay.
for us. Like is it compelling enough that I want to watch this again? And that's part of the reason that I cannot and would never say that 101 Dalmatians is not at the bottom, because I'm not compelled to watch this. Like
Yeah.
there's nothing about that movie that makes me want to watch it again. But for other people, sometimes it's like, well, it's this particular piece of a movie that I'm actually judging the merit on. So for you, how would you actually rank them? And then a follow-up question to that would be, with your own criteria, what would some of your tops be and what would be at the very bottom? We don't need the whole list unless you want to give it to us, but I'd be curious to know kind of like what's at the very top and what's at the very bottom and how you come to that conclusion.
From this season with the animals, yeah, top would definitely be like Dalmatians. And this is not in an order. This is just a grouping.
That's fine.
Yeah.
It's a lot for on the spot.
It is a lot. Yeah. I wish I had done this before. Dalmatians, Lion King, Jungle Book, and Great Mouse Detective.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, that's interesting. I mean, some of my faves, Lion King, Jungle Book, are like 1 and 2 for me. And I think Kirbs, you probably had the Great Mouse Detective.
Oh, it's way up there.
Pretty high.
Yeah, it's
too.
like really high for
Yeah.
me. I think it'd be in my top 5 for sure of this season. It's that clock scene.
I was just gonna say,
get out of town. Like that
it's the clock scene. You know what I'm talking
it's
about?
So
like
good.
Is that a top 5 Disney scene for you?
I see the appeal of it as far as like a good climax in a movie, like you know, from a cinematic standpoint. I get it. A top 5 in all of Disney movies, maybe a top 10.
Okay, leading the witness list with a head shake. Like, what are we doing here? I don't need to get into it again. I already went into it greatly, and I'm sure half of my arguments made it to the cutting room floor, which is why your mom was like, "You got to talk this episode. How nice." But like, I will stand by that film as a whole till the day I die. I think it's exceptional. I think everything about it is just like Babadookie to the left of whatever. It's great. It's great.
Yeah, like the movie on a whole is great, and it's funny because I think we kind of touched on this a little bit before, but like not the most dynamic of groupings of movies, because again, it's like it's not heroes, it's not princesses, and you're kind of like forcing storytelling through like different characters or different approach to characters. But the thing that like probably was like the eye opener for me going with you guys on this season was it was a different approach to world building, and I think this is the part that fascinates me, and probably of those movies that I listed, because the Great Mouse Detective, the thing that I find interesting about it is you've got the mouse detective who lives underneath Sherlock Holmes, and in theory it's kind of a mirrored version of the human world kind of thing. But it's like the thing that I love is, and it's probably like similar to a Cinderella, it's like the mice living in the wall, and like they're picking up the scraps and they're building a dress out of what's left over and things like that. So it's like when you shrink down or blow up to one of those levels, it's like, what does that look like? So it's the same thing, I think, with like Lion King. It takes you into this space that like we as the viewer typically don't have access to. So why am I like, I'm in the savannah, or, you know, and understanding how like all these little creatures and animals are living. And then the same thing on something like I think Dalmatians too is like my favorite part of Dalmatians is the point where they're referring to their humans as their pets. So you get to see like the world through a different lens, I guess.
Yeah. I love that call out to like world building, because they were really like off the formula with this whole season. Like, you know, they had their like structured thing, like you said, for heroes or princesses that worked. All of these movies, and they're like sparsed out kind of weirdly throughout like Disney history. They had to kind of like rewrite that formula and kind of figure out, like, you know, they tried a bunch of different ways. We saw some really successful original ideas. We saw some that were kind of boring, didn't quite stick, like just like a whole different wide mix, which was very interesting about this season for sure.
Yeah, and like you said, like it's spurred out kind of in the overall history to go, okay, we just did a princess one, now we're gonna try rescuers and how that fits into the world and whatever. But again, it's like rescuers is a good example of like the little firefly dude who like flies them on a leaf, but it's a version of a boat. And I'm just
Yeah.
I'm like that's the cute stuff, but also like really smart way of like telling a story as well.
If you're looking for more shenanigans like these, make sure to subscribe to the Scenario D podcast wherever you love to listen. Better yet, why not rate us? Those stars go a long way.
We're also excited to be bringing you all of the facts, feels, and shenanigans over on YouTube. You can now support us by liking, subscribing, ringing the notification bell, and doing everything else you'd normally do for a channel you love. So go watch our latest episode using the link in this episode's description.
And as always, don't forget to catch us on Instagram at Scenario D Podcast. You're going to love all the magic we're making there.